The next and fourth finalist, well, it's actually a joint effort by three people, Maja, Groff, Arthur Lyon Dahl, and Augusto Lopez-Claros. And Maja Groff will be speaking about it. She's an international lawyer based in The Hague, but she's, of course, here speaking in a personal capacity. And the proposal is called Global Governance and the Emergence of Global Institutions for the 21st Century.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. So, in a nutshell, what we are proposing is a set of comprehensive and interlinked reforms to the current UN-based global governance system to enable it to indeed tackle effectively the very urgent challenges and risks confronting humanity as quickly as possible. Our reform proposals for the existing UN system are not cosmetic, but go to core issues to remove key flaws and impediments blocking us from moving forward as an international community. We are proposing substantial reforms to the current architecture, as it would be foolish and also not politically feasible to throw away the very important, significant work and many successes already accomplished within the UN system, where essentially all of humanity is already gathered. This slide presents an overview of our main proposals. I can only cover a very few aspects today, so I refer you to the website for the full set of proposals. But taken together, our proposals ensure that the UN moves as soon as possible to a model of coherent governance, analogous to what we expect from effective national government systems, with capacities for ongoing monitoring and rapid response to current and emerging global risks. The UN would, for the first time, be provided with stable and predictable funding, and would be endowed with three effective branches of governance, namely a reformed General Assembly with a system of weighted voting, moving in stages to the direct election of its members, as called for by Einstein in 1947, with some powers to adopt binding legislation, in particular for the management of the global environment, and those very urgent issues, and the maintenance of international peace and security. Second, an executive council with a primary focus on UN system-wide coherence and effective management, replacing the Security Council. And third, a greatly strengthened and trained international judiciary, tasked with the application of binding international law, to at last move towards a fair and rule-based international order. Also, the UN will be endowed with a true enforcement mechanism for collective security and a comprehensive disarmament plan so that the world may finally benefit from a true peace dividend. It is estimated that currently, violence costs the world and the global economy $14 trillion a year. A new international agency on redressing economic inequality, in itself a huge source of risk, must also be established. We feel that the time is indeed now ripe to take these next significant steps as humanity wakes up to the fact that it is confronted by unprecedented global risks that we must solve together. And indeed, we do have the capacity to solve our problems. While not frequently covered by the media, very dramatic leaps forward have occurred behind the scenes in the maturation of international decision-making, consultation, trust building, and consensus processes in spite of an underlying infrastructure which is outdated. For example, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, despite its flaws, is a remarkable achievement. Its new companion, Talanoa Dialogue, is a novel trust-building process based on a Fijian tradition, leveraging the power we have by virtue of our human diversity. The 2030 Agenda and 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as mentioned this morning, evidence a universally shared ambition to end poverty, reduce inequality, and achieve sustainability, among other things, with the collaboration of all governments in the world, the private sector, and civil society. To conclude, it was never intended that the UN would stay as it is now. And we are confident that with the reforms we are putting forth, drawing upon the learning of over 70 years, we can now collectively succeed in catalyzing a new evolutionary leap, given the maturity of international policy-making processes and the next steps we are planning in the implementation of our proposals. we can effectively address as quickly as possible current and emerging global risks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The unfinished task that lies before us, Eleanor Roosevelt. Thank you. Questions from the jury? Maria?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Maja, on behalf of your team presenting this idea.
Yes.
You present a very comprehensive vision for UN reform. Every Secretary General since the beginning of the United Nations has tried to reform the organization. You noted it's 70 years since we've had the UN. Why would your proposal be successful, and how would it happen?
Yes, very good question. And one has to also recognize that some of the reform proposals mentioned and proposed by Secretary Generals have indeed been implemented, not in terms of the key structural flaws. For example, the Security Council, which was a key flaw that was noted even at the time of the negotiation of the 1945 Charter. So what we heard this morning is that there are processes now in place for reform within the UN and within the system itself, an openness to these sort of evolutionary leaps forward, including, for example, reform to the UN Security Council, and to think about it in conceptually new ways. Also, as we heard this morning, and which is very savvy actually in terms of how international policy making has occurred even from the very earliest days of international law and international peace building, is that we need a bottom-up approach and bottom-up pushes from a broad sector of civil society, the business community, private sector, and indeed individual professionals and officials. So because we are confronting unprecedented global risks now, the time is ripe, and I think that will drive and can drive a new evolutionary leap if there is a communication of key proposals and mobilization around these key proposals. And in terms of the implementation, we have a set of comprehensive reforms and sort of stretch goals for the international community, but there are many different pathways to implement different parts of the proposal, and these reform pathways can be implemented in parallel. And we know, for example, that there are international civil society coalitions already in place and active for an advisory body to the General Assembly based on parliamentary principles, as well as an international anti-corruption court, which is another one of our key proposals. Mm-hmm. So it will take multiple actors to catalyze and communicate and to build momentum to push reform.
Another question from the jury?
Yes, Maja, thank you for that presentation. And just a follow-up to that question, I am still stuck with the model that you showed. And intuitively, I feel like anything that we propose that's an evolutionary leap forward could also mean less bureaucracy. And what you present seems to deepen the bureaucracy. So I just wanted you to speak to that, and because the things we don't like today about the systems are just delayed decision making, and even the implementability. How does your model, which seems to deepen bureaucracy, do that?
Indeed, and we have at the national level at the moment incarnations of very efficient governmental bureaucracies and less efficient governmental bureaucracies. And as an international civil servant for the past 10 years, I've had the pleasure of working with very sophisticated, large, but very effective national government bureaucracies and administrations. So yes, indeed, if this next evolutionary step with new organs and powers and competencies, more funding is embraced, there must be attention given to efficiency, management, coherency. And with our proposal for the Security Council that should transition to an executive council, that executive council would be primarily tasked with management and system coherence functioning. So there would be an efficiency, administration, excellence in management leadership goal of this new oversight organ. And we would hope that, and we would try to inculcate a standard of the highest levels of excellence in international governance, which I think is feasible given, again, the talent and standards that we can see in national government administrations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.